All right, everybody. We're going to, as you're eating, we're going to show you a couple of videos. And being that this is Source's 30th year, and woo! And I'm gonna come up at the beginning of the program and kind of share the timeline that's on your table there. But so we got a kind of a fun one where we asked some old school Source people from way back to send in some videos. And so if you're not aware, you're going to see some old faces in this first one. But then in the second video, we're going to show you as part of our Purple Light campaign that you'll hear more about, which is involving the Super Bowl and Source anti-trafficking. And it's a video that we did with local pastors and talking about why the body of Christ should be involved. And so that's the little introduction, and we'll show these videos back to back, and then we'll let you eat a little more and we'll get going. So thank you.
I just wanted to send a quick video to let you know how Source has impacted my life. So we came to the urban ministry training, and I didn't realize really what bad shape I was in, but it became pretty clear that kind of in the middle of the week that I was just really almost to the point of being willing to, ready to walk away from God, and just feeling like a failure at a lot of things. And I just remember that week so vividly, both because of Peter and all of the leaders who were working Source, but also I made great connections. But the things that happened that week that really changed my life were, I'll never forget feeling like I walked into the building and thought to myself, this is what freedom looks like. Peter does such a great job of creating a shame-free environment where no matter what your brokenness is, no matter what your struggles are, no matter what issues you're facing, you're just loved. And growing up in a very religious community, I had never seen that before, and all I'd seen were the rules and regulations of religion, but not the freedom and love that comes through really knowing Christ and being set free. Just, there are moments that I will never forget, like worship in the basement at the Fallout Center. It was a night where Jeremy Bryan was doing hip-hop and Linnea Spranzi was singing lead vocals, and Joe was leading us in worship, and just the creativity and the willingness to express Christianity in a different way other than your, 3 hymns and a prayer kind of service was really breathtaking for me in 2002.
Source Ministries has played a huge role in my life over the past 20 years. And something just spoke to me in a way that other things hadn't before. It was almost as if my people were at Source, people who saw things the way that I saw things, people who experienced things and wanted to reach and share the love of Christ in unique ways through their gifts and talents. And meeting everybody at Source, Peter and Jessica Wooler, was a very integral part of my faith life. I would say that being part of Source and being part of Source Ministries, urban ministry training, living in the Joshua House, and being part of the internship really, in a sense, helped me stay in the church, helped me realize my gifts and my abilities that were unique in some ways, had a place and had a voice at the table. It was really important to my faith. And without Source and without Peter and Jessica, I don't know where I would be today, if I would still be in the church, if I would know that my voice and the gifts and abilities and talents I had were needed in the body of Christ.
And I feel like Source has impacted my life because I feel like Peter and Jessica were an incredible example to have a vision in their young 20s, I'm assuming 20s or 30s, and have not faltered from it. They have stayed committed, they have served, they fed the homeless, they served the art community. We did so many events in that city, just serving the city, and I feel like they have been such an example. But I have still, to this day, with all the ministries that I have worked at, I have never seen a ministry take the heart of the city in and just serve them and prayed for them. So I think that's awesome.
And went to the UMT and learned that ministry could be different. And I was intrigued. I worked on staff at Source for a year and learned about reaching out to the disenfranchised and the kids that fall through the cracks, the other systems that are in place. And Source was there to meet those kids and to minister to those people and use different tools and different techniques to connect with those kids and to be relational and to make an impact in their lives.
In 1998, I came and was a part of the first UMT, where God really changed some things in my life and really gave me a heart for the marginalized and for the unreached and the untouchable in the city and the world. We would pray and we would ask God to help us to get into spiritual conversations with people. And Peter taught me to be supernaturally natural with people and to just share God's heart with them, to pray with people and not to be afraid to be God's hands and feet to the at-risk young people.
Source provided such a home and a context for us to be missionaries here in the Twin Cities. We just saw God take hearts that were broken and hurting and distrustful of the church and Christians, and through the 10 weeks of running Alpha, hearts just set on fire. And to this day, the passion for kingdom work is still in many of these young lives. It's just so cool. And I love Source, and I love you guys. Bless you.
Within 48 hours of being homeless, it's almost inevitable that youth will be approached for resources in exchange for sex.
Last year, sex trafficking charges occurred in every single county in Minnesota.
Luke 4, when he announced his public ministry, one of the things he said he would do would to come and set the captives free. And if we think about people who are victims of sex trafficking, they're in bondage, they're captive, they're being abused by other people, and those are the very people that Jesus said he was coming to set free. He was coming to liberate them. And if we are the followers of Jesus as the church, then we need to be doing what he did. We need to be doing exactly the mission that he has called the church to do. And victims of sex trafficking, people who are captured in that, who are trapped in that, are people that the church needs to care deeply about.
We care about the hungry, and we care about the homeless, and we care about those in poverty. We care about those living among us, right? We care about the broken. We care about them all along the way, but those in human trafficking have slipped through the cracks. We've missed them in our programs. We've missed them through our community meals. We've missed them in our marketing and promotions of Christmas and Easter. These people are currently being exploited, and I don't think that we should care any less just because we haven't gotten to them yet.
The church is the pillar of truth in society. We hold the place where the gospel is proclaimed and given to a world desperately in need. And it doesn't just care about people's spiritual condition, it cares about everything for human flourishing in our society. So therefore the church is very, very interested to help decrease sex trafficking in Minnesota.
Advocacy can take on many roles, and we can speak up for sure, but we can get involved, and that's where the church's role really comes, individual to individual. We can work with organizations that are already on the front lines of trafficking.
I think the church has been silent on a lot of really difficult, sticky issues in the past, and this issue in particular is difficult. There's no doubt about it. The recidivism rate is high. The actual changing of the stats has been very discouraging at times, and yet that's the very place where the church needs to be. The church needs to be in a place where they extend a cup of cold water, so to speak, without even saying we're doing this so that we get results. We're doing it because we love people and we love God. So therefore, the church should be very active in this.
And in the area of sex trafficking, the church has the opportunity to become partners with people who have skills and gifts and passions to not only work in the freeing of victims from sex trafficking, but also in aftercare, which may be even more important because it's necessary to find ways to break the cycle, or to offer opportunities for the less dramatic steps prior to a child running away, whether that's Treehouse or some of the other programs that we support, that kids would start to see that God cares about them far away from the confines of the church.
And so our church has been involved in a whole variety of things, whether with meeting with people or helping with some of the residential issues or just some of the physical things. We help build the annex, a bunch of our folks. And so there's real practical things you can do with your skill set, but you just have to get around people who know what they're doing.
I would just say that God won't steer you wrong. So there will be barriers along the way to your involvement. There will be trainings that will be required of you. There will be time and energy and effort that's required, but it's all for a purpose. So go through it with joy and keep following where He's leading you.
My name is Jessica Wooler, and I'm an Associate Director here at Source, and I'm so thankful that all of you came out to celebrate with us on our 30th year anniversary. So thank you for coming with us. And we'd like to just take a moment to just introduce the founders of Source, who started Source in 1987, Dave and Donna Heinrich. And I just want to just say a quick blessing over them. Dear Jesus, I just thank you and I praise you for Dave and Donna and for the roots that they sowed in this organization many years ago. And I thank you, Lord, for all of the seeds that they sowed and the fruit that has manifested. And we just pray blessing over them and the work of their hands in the future. In your name, amen. Thank you. And next, I would like to introduce my husband, Peter Wooler, who's Executive Director of Source.
Right, Joe. Thank you. So I'm going to go through a little bit of this timeline that's on your program there, because part of being the 30th year and acknowledging that, we wanted to look back and look at some of the roots and see. We'll throw it up at the end, but at the very beginning, as you filtered in, we had a slideshow, that showed some of us with shorter and less gray hair, and I would like to say a little thinner too. But anyways, but you can see those at the end. But Source, Dave and Donna founded Source in '87, and they founded Source with a heart to reach young adults. They were doing campus ministry. They came out of Campus Crusade for Christ crew now with a heart to bring the truth to young adults and to raise. And after they did that for 5 or 6 years, they went on to plant a church. And from there, I came in contact and a handful of individuals that were a part of a heart to reach out to the marginalized, came in contact with Dave and Donna, and they shared just who we are and just kind of a passion as we were seeing so many young adults, so many teenagers that were falling through the cracks. In 1995, when you talked about homeless youth, that was a brand new term. And especially here in Minnesota, a lot of people were confused by that and didn't even understand how that would be even in our city. And so Dave and Donna very graciously said, come under the banner of Source and take it and kind of reboot Source and have a focus on reaching out and being a friend and a voice to young people who were falling through the cracks, individuals who were not living in their home at the age of 15, 16 years old, and young adults who were living off the streets, in situations where we would have a discussion group or a Bible study with a young man who was 19, and after that he would go out and he would have nowhere to go. He'd be on the streets. And so soon it was very obvious to us, we need to start some type of home. We need some type of transitional home for individuals that are making positive choices with their life, individuals that want to follow Christ and see turnarounds, have a place where they could stay and build a foundation. And so early in 95, actually June 1st, 1995, we started our first transitional home. And since then, for I guess the last 22 years, we've continued that. And so if you want to look at the timeline, you know, really, we started out with this passion of reaching out to young adults, teenagers, again, who are hurting, but also very much desiring help and needing to break through some walls. But they wouldn't come into resources. They wouldn't necessarily just walk into a church or walk into a social work office. They had a lot of walls up. There was a lot of coming from broken homes. There was a lot of trappings. You know, I like to, you know, we think of the cracks and kids falling through the cracks. When I was in high school, the cracks weren't as wide and weren't as deep. You know, we live in a culture where we've met homeless youth that are $20,000 in debt at the age of 18 years old. Individuals who have been abused since they were 13 years old, and involved with things like trafficking and prostitution. And so to come and thinking that's normal. And so our heart was that we would come in contact with these individuals, and then we'd also have a slogan of being a friend and a voice. And so, and what we would do is we'd figure out ways that we could invite individuals and say they were welcome. And this was a safe place to come. And at the beginning, we were very nomadic. And if you kind of look at this timeline, I really think there's kind of 4 seasons of Source. And we talked about Dave and Donna founding it in 87, but then when me and Jessica got involved in 1995, we would do discussion groups at places like Annie's Parlors and Gus Lucky's on Lake Street, and back in Uptown, the old McDonald's, when there was a lot of gutter punks that would hang out there and different things like that. And so we would kind of go where they were and gather, and we would buy, you know, Annie's Parlor. Don't know how many French fries I ate there. You know, we buy baskets and baskets of French fries and have these discussion groups, and just figure out ways to make contact and gain trust. And from there, we had a group that started a coffee shop in Anoka. And then we had what we called a rave outreach house in South Minneapolis. And, you know, don't try a rave outreach house now, because raves really aren't the thing. Although they tell me they're coming back. But this is the end of the 90s. And really, we had a couple of young men that came out of Bethel. And their heart, they were passionate about the rave techno scene, which was this young adult subculture that attracted many different young adults, again, that fit into this marginalized category, that were hungry for help. But there were so many negative influences that we came in to be a light in that darkness. And so from 95 to 2001, we were nomadic. We had this coffee shop for a couple years and the Fuse House for a couple years. Started gathering people. During this time, we continued with our Joshua House, inviting individuals to be in there. You know, we met young adults that would be riding the bus from Minneapolis to St. Paul because they could be on a 1-hour loop, and then they'd have to get out, and then they would get back on the next bus with a transfer, and they'd do that because the shelter wasn't a safe place for them. You know, we had one young man that turned in his predator that he was living with. He was 17 years old, and turned him in to the police for child pornography and for being sexually abused. And the police took the individual and came to him and said, in 24 hours, he's going to be released. And so we pulled up our van to his house and got all his stuff and moved him into the Joshua House. And there's just tons of different stories we could go into of just young people and young adults in harm's way that we would offer this relationship to, and offer a place to stay, but also a community to be a part of. If you look at that front page, things like with our street outreach, me and Jessica lived across from Minneapolis College of Art and Design. Doing stuff with the arts has always just been hand in hand for us, to show that a faith or a people are creative, and to invite people into that is just a very easy thing for the marginalized to come be a part of. And so the arts just being just something that would attract people, almost like a beacon, has always been a part of what we've done. You heard some people reference urban ministry trainings. In the end of the 90s, we also got involved in going out and doing these gatherings around the Midwest with the Rave, and then we got involved in Rainbow and homeless youth national gatherings from that, where hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals would gather in the woods. And Ben and Teresa Pothier continue that ministry with us as well. We were attracted to the Whittier neighborhood, Phillips neighborhood. So as we were there, this neighborhood we saw was really strategic. And me and Jessica lived across from MCAD. We had done some outreaches in some local churches. Right on 24th and Nicollet is the old Jesus People Church, and if you're familiar with that, and we would do outreaches there, and it'd be a great location. There's 4 shelters within just a few blocks of there. They tell me there's over 100 languages spoken within a mile and a half. That's very unique for any urban area. And then again, it's right across from Minneapolis College of Art and Design and the Art Institute. So amidst the poverty and the internationals and the arts, this was a great location, and also the young adults that we were serving were very familiar with it, and so we started being there and started praying there, and really, and then we can go to the next slide, and you can open up your timeline here. We kind of get into the next season, again talking about that second season being from 95 to 2000, and then getting from like 2001 to 2009, 2010. 2001, we were able to acquire the Fallout Urban Arts Center, and again, it's right in that neighborhood. It's a place where for the last 16 years, it's been our hub of outreach. It's been our front door. A big part of what we do when you're reaching out to individuals, young adults, young people that are hurting, there's a simple strategy of figuring out how to make contact and gain trust. And throughout the years, we've done this in many different ways, both with street outreach and hosting things and coming in contact, and a lot of times referrals through the authorities and in many different ways. But that's very significant because there's so many walls up with the hurting. They're not going to just automatically come to you because you might have the answers for them, or you might have some solutions. You have to build that trust. And many times that's not just a one-time thing. So the next step of that is being accessible and available. And so us starting to have permanent buildings allowed us to be accessible and available. And there's so many stories over the last 30 years that we could tell you of individuals that we've seen 2 months after we first met them, and not just 2 months, sometimes 2 years. And even sometimes as many as 10 years. There's some individuals in the room that when we met them as teenagers, and 10 years later, they came to us and said, okay, I'm ready now. And it was because we were accessible and available, and they knew where to find us. And things happened in their life, and God worked seeds, and those germinated in different ways. And so those came to fruition. And so the Followed Urban Arts Center is where we've hosted. We currently host community meals and our food shelf and events, and a place where our prayer room is, but also where our outreach staff is. It gave us kind of a permanent location in that neighborhood of South Minneapolis. And so we could start to become the fabric of that, not just that neighborhood, but South Minneapolis, and start to have influence, in many different areas. And again, seeing that influence be able to help us impact the marginalized and the skeptical. We continued with our Joshua House, our transitional home, over those years. You can see on the bottom there that we had a women's house for about 3 years called the Greenhouse. did some restoration. We were able to acquire a couple other duplexes and started both what we call transitional homes and community homes. And we had different young adults, different married couples want to be a part of what we're doing, have a significant impact. We started seeing the importance, and part of it is even as me and Jessica started having kids, and as these guys started growing up, we started seeing the powerful thing about family and just how that will impact different young adults and inviting them into that. And so part of our community houses have couples in them, have single parents in them, and have different volunteers that really add to the effectiveness of Source. They're residents right in that neighborhood, along with our larger volunteer group with that. Continuing with street neighborhood outreach, Alpha, you guys are familiar with Alpha. Source claims to be the first group to have Alpha in Minnesota. It started in 1995, and so you can check with Margene to confirm that one. Continue with the music art events. And again, during those years too, we started doing more and more with our doing national outreach with homeless youth. And in the winter time in the Ocala forest, there's many travelers and kind of modern day vagabonds and young adults that'll go into the woods in Florida. And we would see, through those years, we'd see individuals baptized in the woods. We would bring back individuals that would live in our Joshua house. We would place women in community houses and partner organizations in other cities. The other thing, if you're an urban minister in Minneapolis and you can figure out how to go to Florida in February, you take that. You go with that, and I think we all know the reasons why. It was just and we would. There's a lot of bang for a buck. We would go for 1 week and set up a prayer tent. We would serve hundreds of meals, and then also just have worship and prayer and just invite people around that fire. And again, it was an example of making contact and gain trust as individuals first would see us. And some of them wanted to fight us, some of them would be very standoffish. But then just over the days, you get to actually live with them in the woods, and they would come closer and closer and be a part of the meals and just start to share their story and allow you to share your story and just encourage them with a message of hope, a message of opportunity, but also a message of worth and value. That's one of the things that I look at over the years, and it's been such an honor and blessing as so many young adults in our culture just feel like they have no worth and value. They're told this in so many different ways. We have a parenting problem within our culture that doesn't know how to nurture. We have a problem that preys on the young teens as far as abuses, with drugs, but even the crazy stuff we know about trafficking and sex trafficking that just makes our stomachs turn. And to be able to be part, and we talk about being a holistic, having a holistic gospel, but being holistic. And holistic should be spelled with a W, by the way. That was purposeful, because the root word is whole, right? And so, but that thing about being holistic to us is that thing about being a friend, that we can come to individuals and let them know about God's love and forgiveness, and that they're worthwhile, and that they do have value, and that this wasn't God's plan for their life. But then we can also offer opportunity with that message, that they can be involved, and that we have caseworkers, we have individuals to be mentors, we have individuals that can help guide their way, we have a community that they can get involved with and build from, and be introduced to local churches and communities that they can continue to be involved in far after Source. And that piece of that holistic message that we carry as a faith-based organization has enabled us to do many things, including you're going to hear about how we're involved with the Super Bowl and trafficking, and how it's something that we didn't try to do, but we've been given this opportunity to make a significant impact because of our credibility, integrity of continuing to serve the city and young adults. To wrap up, you can look on the back page there. And over 2010, 2008, 9 was a tough time for our country with the recession. Tough time for nonprofits. And we tried to hang on, and when 2009 was maybe the year 2008 where we had the most actual staff and functioning, probably had our highest budget, and our giving just went in half, and that was understandable. And and we tried to hang on, and we got ourselves in a little bit of debt, and because you don't want to have to stop things, and you don't want to have to cut back, and because you see the need, but eventually you have to you put lines in the sand and be good stewards, and we were able to continue, and many of you were a part of that and continuing to support us, but in that season too, we felt God tell us to start a new trafficking program. And we had a lot of experience with homeless youth and teens in prostitution. And we're very aware of the needs of what happens after treatment, after a safe house, where individuals have nowhere to go, but the old neighborhood, the old home that got them there in the first place. And this need was obvious, and
because you might have your favorite staff person here and you might not know you're sitting right next to another one. So we just wanted to take a minute just to let you know who everyone is. And as I introduce you, I'm just going to have you guys step forward, okay? This is Allison Bishop, and she works with Merge, which is a church plant that Source has started with about 60, 70 people. Laura Mulligan is our community development person who does our friend and fun development. And so she's the wonderful person who hosted and put together this banquet this evening, this gala. So thank you. This is Ben Pathier, and his wife Therese is also here with a brand newborn baby. And they lead our homeless youth outreach. And so they go down to Florida and reach out to Ocala and different homeless youth as the different travelers. And so we thank you, Ben, for being here. Heather is on staff as a social worker with us and works with our anti-trafficking program. And Maria is our anti-trafficking director, who oversees all of our anti-trafficking efforts. Pat is our administrative director and keeps us in line and keeps everything ship-shape. If you don't ever remember something, you ask Pat, and Pat knows the answer. I love Pat. And Natalie is our volunteer coordinator, which we are so excited. We have never had a volunteer coordinator before in all these years, and we just hired her this past year. So look forward to that becoming more developed, and she's also over our communication, so thank you. And Courtney does a couple things. She assists us in the office with bookkeeping, but she also has a heart for women with trafficking and for the marginalized and poor. And so she is available and helps out with the community meals and with some leadership with the women with anti-trafficking. And Joshua is her husband, and he is our outreach coordinator, and then he also oversees our facilities. God's blessed us with a handful of facilities, and we need some continual maintenance on these facilities, so we're grateful for Joshua. So thank you very much for coming. Go ahead and sit down. Next, I'd like to introduce Tom, who is chairman of our board, and Chuck Denninger. Come on up.
Thanks, Jessica. Well, this is Chuck Denninger, and it's my distinct privilege as the chairman of the board of directors to express on behalf of Source the deep appreciation we have for his years of service, really unusual years of service, making significant contributions for 12 years. He just finished a 12-year run as a member of our board of directors. And Chuck is one of those all-in servants in the ministry. He's gone way beyond what is normally expected of a board member. He served as our treasurer, number one, and at every banquet, golf tournament, he's always filled tables and invited guests. He's been deeply involved championing Source with the church that he attends, Lord of Life, and has got them involved, becoming really a significant donor to our ministry. And in addition to that, Chuck has recruited youth for summer outreaches and then taken days off to be involved in helping lead some of those outreaches himself. He's involved in the monthly outreach at our community meal. And not only that, but he and his wife, Gwen, have frequently invited board members, staff members, the Wooler family to enjoy times of refreshing at their lake home. And so we just deeply appreciate Chuck. And so on behalf of the Woolers and the Source board and our staff and all the people that represent Source, we just want to say, Chuck, we really, really appreciate you, man. And just want to give Chuck a plaque. It just says Chuck Denninger in recognition of 12 years of dedicated servant leadership, countless hours of sacrifice as a board member, treasurer, and volunteer advocate. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. So we appreciate you, Chuck.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Laura said I have 20 minutes. We appreciate Laura. There is hope in the city. Can I get an amen? There is hope in the city. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Jessica, for the recognition and your kind words. I benefited serving with Peter and Dave Heinrich and Jessica and Jeff Orlick. Jeff, where are you? I think I saw you. Jeff is our... hey, Jeff. Shout out to Jeff. And our many staff and our many volunteers. So thank you very much. Everyone I've worked alongside with has had a heart to serve, to seek out those who are hurting and alone and broken and in need of a friend. And I've been blessed to be with Source, so thank you. But if you can bear with me, I would like to share a few comments. So Peter, I appreciate you. I appreciate your heart, your wisdom, your vision, and the gifts you've got from God. I've been touched and challenged. I feel I've been trained and inspired by you and your ministry and your guidance. Thank you for that. Peter has a rare gift of being able to connect with anyone, whether it's a homeless youth on a corner or an executive in the hallway. He puts them at ease, finds out how they're doing, where they are in their lives at that time, and how Christ can play a role in their lives. Peter, God does have a wonderful plan for you and for Jessica and for your children. I would like to share an anecdote about Peter. 7 or 8 years ago, we have our, up at Lord of Life Maple Grove, we have a men's breakfast, and I invited Peter to come up and talk. I don't know if you remember that one. It was early. And I was getting ready to introduce Peter, and again, it's men's breakfast, and the average age of the men was about 65. So, of course, Peter and I were the youngest ones there. So when I introduced Peter and he walked in, pretty much all the men kind of crossed their arms when they saw this young man with dreadlocks, and what's he doing here? As soon as I mentioned you were a Bethel grad with engineering, the arms came down. So I was paying attention. And by the end of your talk, they totally embraced Peter, and they were very, very receptive and visibly touched. I could see that. Awesome. So I have been so moved. Young men, young homeless men being affected, their lives being affected by the transitional housing we have, as well as a community. I have been so moved. The Source began its anti-trafficking program, seeing how women can escape sex trafficking and be surrounded by a caring, nurturing, non-judgmental, and supportive community. Source is having an impact on so many lives. Almost done. I recall looking around the table at one of our Source board meetings and in the past, and seeing our board members having a ordained minister, a retired pastor, another ordained minister, a pastor, and a CPA. That's helped my prayer life. And the Source board was quite kind when I mentioned to them last month that I was going to resign. The board is also quick to point out I can leave the board, but I can't leave the banquet sign-up list or the golf list or the donation list. So Peter, Jessica, Tom, Source board members, Source staff, Source volunteers, and friends of Source, it's been an honor and a privilege. I did try to keep this together. I think I did all right. Thank you. There is hope in the city.
One of my heartbeats is our urban outreach. And before I ever became on board with Source, when I was in my 20s and looking for some place to volunteer, I was really impressed with their hearts for all different types of people, for the marginalized, for the poor, for the artist, for the street punk, any different race or age. They loved them. And so it just really grasped my heart. And so as I was praying about, Lord, where do you want me to be involved? How do you want me to be involved? You know, the Lord said Source. In fact, I had a dream about it at my mother's second wedding. So it was just kind of this like, all right, God, you know, my mom's getting married and I'm getting ready to go into ministry. So, but it's always just been in my heart. And I love what we do. And so I just would like to share a little video that we have with our friend Alicia.
My name is Alicia Williams. I've been on my own since I was 19. I had my son at 20, and I had to grow up really fast because of that, even though I was still a young adult. It was hard. It was really hard with having a kid and having to take care of him and being single and paying daycare and working, and you know, it was a lot of responsibility, but he's 12 now. Source is located in South Minneapolis. It has a homeless outreach center. They have a church. They host events, concerts, and Source also has our community center that has a food shelf and community meals. Source's food shelf has helped me whenever I needed assistance, but mostly I really come when I am out of work in summers. That's more of my hardship. When your number is called, you go in the back and you get your groceries. Normally, people leave after or bag their stuff up however they want it. And then if they're in need of any type of clothes, they can go to the clothes closet. It's very diverse. You see all types of walks of life, from blacks to whites to single mothers, single fathers, people that deal with addiction, people that don't speak English, just anything you can name, they're there wanting help. And we all do need help. They are also there for me spiritually if I need prayer. Last year, my son was going through a concussion, and there was some issues, and he was still having side effects, and I was really concerned, and Pastor was there for me and prayed for me and checked on him, and continually until we got the praise report that everything was okay. And I really appreciated that. I'd say it's just good Christian people that are there to support you, period, in whatever way that they can. If I was not able to come here and get assistance when I need it, it would affect me as well as my son. You know, a parent can always do without, but a kid, you can't tell them they can't eat. Taking care of him has been a lot, but it's been worth it. And with God's help and always providing for the both of us to have the things that we have.
That video looks a little familiar, and I'm glad you're thinking that. I had asked Alicia to come this evening, but she's working evenings. But this video is actually 2 years old. And the reason I wanted to show it is because one of our core values at Source is relationship. And we love because God first loved us. And that's where when we don't feel like we can love enough and we meet somebody who's maybe different than us, we're not sure how to do it, we say, Jesus, will you please enlarge our hearts? And do you know what? He shows up every time. He enlarges our hearts. And we fall in love with people we didn't know we'd fall in love with. Well, Alicia, since 2 years ago, we helped her move into a safer home in a better neighborhood. Her son now is in a private Christian school. They started coming to our small church Merge, and he's coming to youth group. She went through cancer. She got healed this year from cancer. And then she decided it was such a good year. She's like, I'm finally ready to say yes to Jesus. So she said, I want to follow Jesus. I did it when I was a little kid, but it's never meant anything to me. So can I do that again? I said, yes, we can do that again. So we just feel like, we're welcoming her home. And that's often what people will say to us is when they come back around, they said, I feel like I'm coming home. I feel like I'm coming to family. And it's like, you are, because we're all part of God's family. He loves us. He's inviting us in. Next, I'd like to welcome Natalie and Joshua. Natalie and Joshua work closely together with Source as Joshua works with the urban outreach, and she plugs in volunteers, and so they're going to, I'm going to let them take it away.
So 2 of Source's signature annual events are our May Day outreach in Powderhorn Park and our annual Follow Block Party. In your role as communications and volunteer coordinator, Natalie, how do you see Source's mission being fulfilled through these events?
All right, so I came on to staff shortly before we actually did our first major event, which Josh just mentioned, the May Day outreach. And everyone kept talking about it and saying it was such a cool event. And I was like, what in the world is May Day? Like, isn't that when you leave a gift at someone's door and run away? I had no idea. And so I showed up a little unexpectedly, like not knowing what to anticipate. But it started to click as we were there, interacting with people who you don't normally see in necessarily suburban neighborhoods or a church setting. I started to see the way we would connect. We had a puzzle mural there, we had kids crafts, and there were all sorts of people there. I mean, it was a super crowded event in the Phillips neighborhood, and we just were able to invite them in, kind of, as has been mentioned already by multiple people, into a safe place where we could make contact with them. And I was able to see people who don't necessarily feel comfortable going to church come in, participate in the puzzle mural, and then start talking with us and develop a little bit of a connection, and then offer prayer if we were able to, or something along those lines, and develop relationships, and then invite them back into our space. And that leads into our next event, which happens about a month or two after the May Day park event, is our Art Fest, or our block party, as we're now calling it. Our block party is where we shut down our street right in front of our main office building, and we bring out all the stops. I mean, we have performers and the puzzle mural again, which is everyone's favorite, and kids games and all this other stuff. And it's kind of our turn, after going out into their neighborhood and making connections with them, to invite them back into ours. And so it's this like partnership that says, we are not afraid to come into your space and connect with you and meet you where you're at, but now we'd love for you to come back with us. And so it was so neat to see people that we connected at May Day, and also just people from our own neighborhood coming in and hanging out with us. And one moment that like stands out to me the most is, we're doing salsa dancing in the street, like having a salsa dance class. I don't salsa dance, but I'm out there trying it as best I can. And this Somali woman comes up with her son, and she's dancing next to me, and she's touching me on the shoulder, and she's like, "This is so cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And I loved it, because I'm not necessarily always running into individuals like that, or we don't have all these connections, but out there dancing to salsa, which neither of us could do, we had a connection point, and we were able to develop a little bit of a relationship and have a conversation. And that's really what these major events are all about, is creating these safe spaces where we can connect with people and hopefully start developing a relationship. So on that thread, I want to point it back to Josh, and just Josh, as our urban outreach coordinator, manages our weekly community meals, which Chuck mentioned, and our monthly food shelf. And so what do these look like, and how do they fit the mission of Source?
So our weekly community meal is held Wednesday nights, and it's just a really low-key gathering for our neighborhood, for staff members with Source, volunteers, churches that will come and volunteer to bring food to share with us, and people from the neighborhood, and just an opportunity to come together. I think just sitting around the table together, meeting a common need that all of us have in being fed, it just sort of naturally levels the playing field. And kind of just gives you a natural vehicle to start building relationship and having conversations. These meals are frequently attended by, really a diverse selection from our neighborhood, and we will have a number of Somali children from the neighborhood. Sometimes a couple of the parents will come and attend with us. And interestingly enough, the first time we had any of them come in for the meal was as a result of Pokemon Go. So apparently we had a Pokemon in our building. The Lord works in mysterious ways. But along with that, also operating the food shelf and being able to pick that up again this past summer, and operating that once a month, and we'll start in January operating twice a month. We're just able to meet very practical needs for people in the neighborhood. It is attended by some of our Somali neighbors, some different people from various backgrounds, religious backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and different walks of life. And we have a number of elderly Vietnamese that live in a building up the block from us that will come. And frequently, we're carrying groceries back for a 70-year-old Vietnamese woman who really doesn't speak English, but just seeing the smiles on their faces, seeing how appreciative they are of being able to just provide from the abundance that God has given us is really an amazing thing. I've literally seen an elderly Vietnamese woman jump for joy and clap. I've seen a middle-aged man on the verge of tears for receiving three large bags of groceries, and these are just very practical things. And having people stop me on the street sometimes, or come back to a community meal and talk about how much it's impacted them to be able to have this food provided for them, but also people coming and talking about just what it means to them to have a place that they can go and feel welcome. And that sense of home that Jessica referenced is a very real thing for a lot of people in the neighborhood who may not have a lot of other opportunities to engage with people in their lives, people who may be feeling very lonely or kind of cast aside, and are feeling just very welcome, regardless of whether they believe as we believe. They know that they're welcome and they're embraced and they're loved. So that's just a very powerful, practical ministry in food shelf and community meals. I'm going to turn it back over to Natalie with this question. So these events and activities represent some of our regular rhythms in ministry. We also host groups from various churches and ministries to come and participate in seminars and volunteer work days. Natalie, as our volunteer coordinator, could you share about how this further serves our ministry at Source?
Yeah. So one of the things, we've been talking about going out and connecting with our neighborhood, with individuals who are at need. But another part of our ministry that we recognize is being kind of like what we like to talk about, a conduit for the church, and partnering and recognizing that as a ministry, we don't stand alone. We have our brothers and sisters in Christ and other churches and organizations that we can partner with. And so one of the ways that we've developed that partnership is through volunteer days. And so this past year, we probably had about a dozen volunteer groups come from anywhere for 2 to 3 hours, like a half day to a full day, or even for multiple days, and just come get to know us. We'll talk about our urban ministry, what that looks like. We'll talk about anti-trafficking, what that looks like, how our transitional home serves women coming out of trafficking, and we'll just educate them and share kind of our heartbeat of what we do and hope that they catch on to that heartbeat as well. But then we don't stop there, because we obviously are a fairly small staff, as you saw earlier. And so we love to take advantage of any, especially young high school or college students who are eager to get dirty or lift heavy stuff. And so we put them to work. I mean, one group that I want to highlight especially is our Cambridge First Baptist Church up in Cambridge. They have a group that just comes down before our block party every single year, and they bring a new group of junior hires, which can be an interesting group to work with, but they're super enthusiastic, which is what I love about them. And so they come down and they just listen and engage, and then they're like, you want me to sweep the floor? I'll sweep the floor. I'll sweep it 10 times. And so it's like, it's great because they come and they clean our buildings, they move stuff, they prep and set up for our block party. And it's this neat relationship where we get to see the body of Christ working together and ministering. And then hopefully, as they get older, if they want to come back and intern with us, or if they just want to become a regular volunteer, again, it's that relationship building that we always want to come back to. So I want to give it back to Josh again, because as we've been talking about all of this, these are kind of one-time events that we've been talking about, but we want, the heart of all these activities and all this outreach is to engage individuals in discipleship and empower them to build foundations for the future. So Josh, what are some ways that urban outreach accomplishes the long-term goal?
So a couple of things I'd like to highlight with that is our discipleship groups we're hosting after our community meal. So it's just an opportunity to engage individuals in taking time to, spend some time together in worship, to just take time to read the Word and to discuss that and to engage that and really challenge each other to go further with that, and also to just take significant time to pray for one another, to know what's really going on in each other's lives and encourage each other. And it's just been really encouraging to see, some guys really be able to start opening up, talking about some different things they're struggling with and the things that they want to give praise to God for, and to be able to walk together through that. And then in our transitional housing, I'd like to just share a specific story of one individual who's come to live with us recently. So I was introduced to Todd at the end of August and came into contact with him, but Todd actually had struggled with addiction really for probably the past 25 years, off and on. And he shared with me how 20 years ago he met another individual, Corey, who attends Merge, who is a regular part of our community, and also went through a lot of these journeys together. And how 7 years ago he saw transformation in Corey's life and being involved in Source, and how he saw something he wanted, and he wasn't really ready to fully embrace that at that time. But this past summer he had gone through a treatment program, and he really found himself without a place that he felt like he could go. So he had spent a couple of months living in his truck with his dog, and he sent something to me that I'd just like to read it. I think from this point in the story that it really represents it better than I could try to paraphrase it. So it says, Corey called me one Saturday night towards the end of the summer and asked me if I would like to get baptized in the morning. Being on a spiritual adventure, I gratefully accepted the offer and ceremoniously accept Jesus Christ into my life. And that morning, I met the group that had always made me feel so welcome every time I see them, and was baptized that morning along with Peter and his daughter. I can honestly say that my life has changed since that day. I have not known what to expect from day to day along this journey, but it always works out, and I don't need to know how. It seems that the key to life is to live in the moment, have faith that Christ has my best interests at heart, and having faith, losing my place. Having faith in Jesus Christ has allowed me to find work in my field, get back into college, and work towards finishing the final credits to complete my college degree. I'm able to find time at school and church to volunteer, and more than anything, others see a change in how Christ is working in my life, and this provides the ability to tell them about the events and services available through Source that they too can find the journey that Christ has in store for their lives. So Todd moved into the Joshua House in September, and it's just, for me, been a privilege to have a time to get to know him and to meet with him and talk through some of the things that he's working on in his life and encourage him in that walk. And this is really, I think, at the heart for us what this is all about, is seeing, through all these different activities and all these different opportunities to invite people in and draw them in, is to have opportunities to really invest in people's lives, see them grow closer to Christ, and to see their lives transformed and be able to build on those foundations for the future. Thank you.
I am taller. Hi, I'd like to share a little bit about our anti-trafficking program. I should let it go. We have a home specifically for women who've come out of prostitution and trafficking. And our home is specifically for women 18 years and older. And they can stay with us up to 18 months. We do case management with them. We do life skill, focus on education, all kinds of things. And I want to introduce you to one of the ladies that has come through our program. Her name is Mandy, and she graduated 2 years ago. And I just want to introduce you to her. It's been an honor on my side to work alongside her, and it's a privilege. So here's Mandy.
I came to the annex 1 week exactly before my baby was born. Honestly, merge was very different for me. It was like a culture shock. Even if you don't want to build new relationships or do new things, they push you. They push it on you. And you learn to love it, and you realize what you've been missing all this time. My life now is very, very busy. I started school, and I have a perfect 4.0. I'm really proud of that, and I work really hard doing that. And I started a women's group here. I'm still friends with RVs that were there when I was there and left now. The annex helps me to put God in my everyday life now. Even my baby, when we sit down to eat, before we even say a prayer, he says, "Amen," because we pray so much. Recovery Resources gave me a family. It gave me enough time to adjust to life in a safe place with safe people. When times are hard and we go through struggles, it makes it easier because I know I'm not alone.
I told you, she's pretty amazing, isn't she? I saw her this afternoon, and she's incredible. She also recently joined our online outreach team. I'll be talking a little bit about that more. One of the things she mentioned was RVs, and these are residential volunteers. And I have Lauren. Is Lauren? Lauren, come and join me, please. Lauren has been a residential volunteer at the annex for this last year, and I want to invite her to come and share what that has meant for her. Thank you, Lauren. She just moved out. We still miss her. This girl has a great sense of humor. Thank you.
First of all, I want to say this is such an honor to be asked to speak on such a momentous occasion of 30 years of Source, and kind of a newer player on the scene. I probably have been involved a little over a year, and Mandy's story is a tough act to follow. But I would say that what I wanted to share with you tonight is just my journey to humility and just the time that I've had with Source, and just thank you to Peter and Jessica for the great organization that you've just dedicated your lives to, and how cool that is and inspiring. But what I realized is the true meaning of what it means to show up. This last year, I realized that showing up is actually really inconvenient, and it's hard. But I find that it's when I take the time to slow down and truly listen to God's prompting that those are the most sacred and beautiful moments that I've had in my life. I've learned that I cannot think my way into obedience. I become obedient by my actions and by doing. And sometimes with stories like Mandy's, oftentimes we're only shown enough of it to see the upward linear progression of healing. And I think sometimes our world, we're addicted to the fast pace environment, and just things are just going, that we sometimes lose taste for the mundane of the human experience. And this past year is what I've learned is to dedicate the time and celebrate the small victories, because it feels like there are so many losses when you do this work. So just doing whatever God asks of you, no matter how small. And I would say following him into this work is the ultimate adventure. You end up in situations you never thought you would, but that's the fun part. I mean, sometimes. And I used to shiver at the word adventure because I thought, is this going to be big and bold and exciting and like Instagrammable, like diving off into a cliff, stuff like that. That's what we think of as adventure. And I realized that I never associated adventure with showing up when you didn't feel like it, just that anger and of inefficiency, of just not feeling like, am I even doing anything? Why am I doing this? And so tonight I wanted to speak truth into the reality of what the daily existence of following God, living alongside these amazing women. That sentence itself seems kind of bold. I live alongside women coming out of human trafficking. People are like, you just don't drop that in normal conversation. People are not ready. They're just not. But I think it's because the words human trafficking are often open to debate and discussion, and it's this new kind of sensationalized thing that's taking our churches and our task forces by storm. Whatever should we do? How are we going to stop it? And I think when we think of it that way, we are sensationalizing something that has been a terrible reality since the beginning of time. And we are drinking a diet of poison that we're the hero, and we're wondering why the world is still sick. Because heroes will not have put a stop to this grave injustice. Only God can. And I thought, honestly, moving to the annex would make me a hero, if I'm being honest, but I was wrong. And so I think the only way that we can do anything about trafficking is if we have the humility to show up in the way that we just have to get out of God's way and say yes. And that's what I love about Source. They just get out of God's way and they just do what he calls them to do, the next right thing. And I think when people hear that you do this, they ask you, so what's it like living alongside people coming out of trauma? Which is a valid question. And then they also ask, what brought you to this work? And it's an honoring question in the sense that people are truly interested and they want to know. And I think it's important that we share kind of what leads us into our journeys. But after a while, I kind of began to resent this question because oftentimes I think out of our deepest pain comes our deepest ministry. And so sometimes when people would ask me that at the end, I would hear, are you doing this because you were in prostitution? Is this your way to redemption? Were you broken? Is this why you're giving back? And I know they didn't mean it, but it just made me think about how I ask questions when I walk alongside people. And that's not something that you just no, it's something that you learn by doing. And so that was one of the things that I've learned this past year, of just really looking at the lens that I'm questioning through and kind of confronting my own privilege and bias. And I think we do this, though, is because we want to put experiences in a box that we can understand. We want this sterilized version of serving, something that makes sense. And when I first moved in the annex, I was struck by how much I didn't know. I remember Maria showing me a box of rubber gloves that we were supposed to use if one of the residents had a medical need that we needed to attend to. And I was kind of struck by the gravity of what that meant. And I realized it's because serving is messy, and we tend to want safeguards to protect ourselves from getting it on us, like from getting it in our own flesh and blood, from it seeping into our existence. And I find it's when I took my gloves off, that's when God showed up. That's when the difference was made. And I think sometimes the church, not merge, can talk a good game on Sunday morning about that we like to think ourselves as people who are willing to get down into the muddy trenches and help lift those others up into a place of better existence. But we kind of tend to prefer the glamorization of the airlifted rescue coming down from our place of mightiness and showmanship of humility. And I'm no different from that. I wanted to be a hero. But if I've learned anything this last year, is we must stop judging ourselves by our intentions and to begin to see our identity in our actions. What we need more than heroes are friends. Friends who are willing to walk alongside in the day-to-day struggles, even when it's inconvenient to sit in the pain. And living in the annex, we didn't often get to hear the true, all of the women's stories, but we did get to hear and live with the residual trauma that stemmed from them, though. And that was the thing. There wasn't any glory in that, according to the world. And some days I woke up and I felt like I'd been hit by a bus because I was so tired. And I'd become distrustful and suspicious of the very woman that I had wanted to help. But I had to learn to confront my own fear, because when I was feeling that, I was just afraid that I wouldn't be enough in the situation, that I wouldn't know what to do, that I would cause more harm than I was trying to help. And so then I had to confront that fear drive more of my decisions than I even knew. Fear of losing something we think we need to be happy, or fear of attaining something, or fear of not attaining something that we think we need to be happy, are two of the greatest motivators of holding us back from what God has for us and for what we can do for him in this world. And I experienced fear every day in the annex in a good way, because I had to confront myself. But the beautiful thing is the ancient wisdom of doing one thing a day that scares you causes you to realize and develop a dependence on God that no matter what happens, you'll be okay. And I think my biggest fear of the annex was, would I be able to remain the same? Would this stretch me too much? Would I not be able to recover? Would this be too hard for my spirit? And the ironic part is I was asking myself those questions prior to moving in. I was feeling really stuck in the place that I was in life. And so I was in my cocoon little comfort bubble, and that was a blessing from God too. But when I realized that I could let that go and step out on the limb, I knew that I was stepping into what he had for me. And I love, I came across this analogy somewhere, and it related to me because I'm also an artist. And it said, as artists understand that the destruction of self is part of the expansion, and they are willing to do what is best for the masterpiece. Your life is art when you make tough choices in favor of your soul. You're making a masterpiece out of your existence. You get to be part of God's beautiful work. And then this work changes you, and God changes you through the work. And if I could, just with all of what Natalie and Josh brought up, some of those great opportunities, if I could caution you against the comfort and inspire you to say yes to being a part of Source, then this is what this is for. Or if something else resonated with you, take that and leave the rest. And I'm going to end, I'm sorry, I'm probably going too long, but I'm going to end with the prayer of St. Francis, and I love that because it talks about, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. It doesn't say, Lord, give me peace. It says, make me a channel. And oftentimes when we're the channel, kind of what they were talking about earlier, we must go into places that people don't want to go. We must go and maybe be in harm's way. It costs us something. And it's scary. But I find that I feel most alive on that edge of existence. That moment where I look up to God and like, oh my God, are we really going to jump? Are we really going to do it? And he's like, yes. It's amazing. But sometimes I don't jump and I retreat back into my comfort, and it's honestly painful. It's honestly more painful than jumping. So I want to leave you with this prayer and just embolden you to say yes. So this is the prayer of St. Francis, if you just bow your heads with me. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring a spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, but where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. And it is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Thank you.
Source has been involved with homeless youth, teen prostitution, and transitional homes since 1995. We have an urban art center that's a community center in a very diverse neighborhood in South Minneapolis. There we host community meals as well as food shelf and different outreach events. So the Super Bowl is coming into town, and there's a lot of efforts being made, and good efforts that will be effective during those 2 weeks. There'll be a significant amount of trafficking. Law enforcement, nonprofit agencies are going to do a lot to help curb that, as well as rescue individuals. Last February, I went down to Houston with Officer Grant Snyder, and we were able to witness lots of good things that were happening. 12 teens got rescued from missing children reports during that time. After the Super Bowl, it will be worse. Individuals from out of town that have set up shop will realize it's easier to stay here and continue. There'll be new entrepreneurs that get brand new opportunity, and they'll continue. The result will be more victims. A year from now, it will be worse. The vision of the Purple Light is not just for the Super Bowl, but for the Super Bowl and beyond. It asks the questions, what if we can increase resources during the Super Bowl, but that they would continue after the Super Bowl in such a way that there would be a whole new culture for victims. But we have an opportunity to do something different, to do something significantly different, to not just do the status quo. We have an opportunity to see the culture of victimization for trafficking and prostitution change dramatically for the Super Bowl and beyond, right here, right now.
That has been our initiative this year, with a focus around the Super Bowl that we're all very aware of, that's coming here in February. And the discussion that is going on about sex trafficking and the increase of prostitution in our cities. As SOAR's anti-trafficking, it's been an honor to be chosen to be the victim resource coordinator. Minneapolis law enforcement has chosen us for that role, and it's a great honor, and it comes with a great responsibility as well. And we have been in the process of training volunteers and people that want to be involved with all the initiatives that are going on around the Super Bowl. We'll be increasing our online outreach. We have a team that meets on a weekly basis. And I don't know if you're aware, but I'm originally from the Netherlands. The biggest brothel is not in Amsterdam. It's not in Asia. It's online. Everywhere where people can get access online, that's where they're able to purchase women as well. So we have found ways to connect with the women who are advertising online, and we are able to meet with them and share with them that there are people that care, and there are resources out there. It's planting a lot of seeds. It's sending out a lot of text messages, but women will have our phone number, and will be able to contact us when they're ready to leave. Besides that, we're also, when law enforcement does recoveries and they pull women out of situations, they won't arrest them for prostitution. They will arrest them for other crimes, but not for prostitution. And that's when we will get phone calls, and we'll come alongside law enforcement and have that conversation with the women. Not too long ago, a couple of us as staff were called into the police station in Minneapolis, where women had been brought in, but they were free to go. And we were able to have conversations with them, not with all of them. Some were just ready to go and get their next fix, food, or just needed to get out there. But we were able to drop off one lady at a detox center here in the cities. And when she came out, she called one of our staff, and we were able to purchase her a bus ticket to be able to go home to her family. Another lady had an untreated broken arm, and we were able to drop her off at the not at the police station, that would not be helpful, at the hospital. So that's why we have Google, so Maria knows where to take people. But so there are many opportunities like that coming up around the Super Bowl. We have different trainings coming up, as I mentioned, because we are not just throwing people out there. It's very important. These are traumatized women. Laura and I have had so much fun doing so many trainings this last fall. And we have one coming up next week at Grace Church out in Eden Prairie. We have one coming up at Hope Community Church in Minneapolis, and just to get more and more of the church involved in these opportunities. Hope Community is right across the Super Bowl, US Bank Stadium. They'll be closed that week, but they have offered their space for us to bring women who are recovered to have a safe place where there's a bed for them to sleep, there's a hot meal for them, and we're offering resources. So there's a lot of opportunities, and it's very exciting. But in midst of all this, we are very aware that this is happening today. It's happening during the Super Bowl and past the Super Bowl. Don't forget that. Thank you.
So you've journeyed with us towards the beginning, the foundation, to the present, to the future. So what's next? So as we wrap it up here this evening, we wanted to just take a minute, because a lot of people end up asking Peter and I, how are your kids, or who are your kids? For those of us who've journeyed with us for 20 years, how are they doing? So I'm just going to ask our kids to stand up. I've got 3 here, and I've got Bella out somewhere. Is she in here? She's with Grandma. Okay, she's way over here. So Bella's 8. She's with Grandma. And then we've got Anna Sky here, who's 16. Hosea's 11. And Azariah with his fractured shoulders, 13. So anyway, so thank you for supporting us. As some of you also are aware of, and some of you don't know us at all, so you have no idea, and that's just fine too. But Peter has been battling stage 4 cancer. And so we wanted to just acknowledge that, because it's kind of like the elephant in the room, and unhealthy families don't talk about those things. So we wanted to say, yes, he does, and he's battling that, and we don't know what that's going to look like. And then people will ask me, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I don't know. What I do know is that the Lord called me to follow him. And the Lord put a dream and a vision and a burden in my heart for this city. He moved me from Omaha, Nebraska to Minneapolis, Minnesota to be a light. I would have visions and dreams, and I would say, Lord, is that you talking to me? And he made it very, very clear that I was to move up here. So I came up here to give the love and forgiveness away to people. And so that's one of the reasons I love being with Source. I'll remain being with Source, and I want to continue with Source. And so with our Urban Outreach Center and where we minister, it's at the hub of the Whittier neighborhood. There's 100 languages spoken within a mile and a half, so it's very diverse. And my background actually is an art background, and I had 2 artists as parents growing up. And so one of the things that God showed me over the years is that between the arts and relationship, those together make a perfect like marriage to build relationships. Because if you can't have a conversations, and sometimes you can't, when you're working with wounded people, we might not have the language to express how we are. But you know what? You can draw a picture, you can make a collage, and then it gains access and it gains trust, and then you can actually help people come closer. Sorry, I'm not done yet. I take a breath.
You're doing good. You go, girl. Yeah.
I woke up this morning. I went to bed late last night, and this morning when I woke up, the Lord reminded me of a vision that he gave me a few years ago. And the vision was, it was actually a screen that was rolled down, and it's a map of our Urban Arts Center. And he said to me, "You're not finished yet. Yes, this past year we started rehabbing our community room, and we're still working on that. But he has so many more plans. We would love to change the facade on the front of the building so it's more accessible. We'd love to restore some of the different rooms. We'd love to have art therapy going in there as a drop-in center. We'd love to have all different types of, it was like, if you think of an art community center. I remember the first time God put this dream in my heart years ago, and I was at an allergy doctor, and I was sharing with Mr. Wiseman. He said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Mr. Stephen Wiseman says to me, and I said, "I don't know, but I have this dream." And he said, "Okay, let's hear it." You know, and I just began to share with him, just as there was years ago, the YMCA was a sports and athletics center for people to drop in. Well, what if there was an art center that it didn't matter if you were homeless or marginalized, or if you were a teenager, or if you're a child, but we used art to connect with people and to build relationships and to give them practical tools. We had food for them, and we had clothes for them, and we had like counseling for them. What if we did that? Maybe we'd make a dent in the city. And you know, we've done some of that with Source, but we're not finished yet. And we still have a lot to do, and a lot of people in our area who need more of Jesus and who just need plain healing in a holistic fashion. And that's why we have the Fallout Urban Arts Center.
Yeah. Hard to follow. Isn't she great? No, she is beyond great. And so, you know, as we wrap up and as we just look at the future, and, you know, there's some practical things that I want to point to on the back of this that show, you know, just the vision of what we want to go forward. And part of that is to literally do more, because we see more of the kingdom needing to come to the city. We need more hope and opportunity for individuals. And so there's a natural thing that as we come in contact with it, we want to see that growth. And so that's a big part of the vision. And Jessica mentioned with the Urban Arts Center, but we also, with our men's recovery program, we want to see that expand. We want to see, you know, that's somewhat, you know, part of being a small organization, you know, over the years, is you say yes to some things, you say no to other things. And so our men's program with that has continued, but it has continued on a lower level, let's just say that. But we want to see that be established. And Josh is starting to establish a team with that, and want to see that more and more, have more men come through that as well. We want to have a bigger impact in the city. Thank you. With our homeless outreach, with our neighborhood outreach. And the different things that you heard about tonight will continue. But also specifically as you heard about our Purple Light, and really that Maria did such a good job of talking about, hey, this is happening now. And yeah, there's going to be a surge at the Super Bowl, but after that's over, guess what? It is going to be worse. That's just how it is. That's what happens in the cities. And so the vision is that beyond that we can really change the culture. And you can see the 5 things there of we want to see significant outreach teams way beyond what we're doing now. We want to see a demand outreach. You know, I had also the privilege of going with chaplains with the Minneapolis Police Force. And when they arrest the men, I've been able to sit down and counsel them and talk to them. One guy we met with, he fainted. He's just like, this is going to ruin my life. Grant Schneider's told stories where I think it was maybe one of the first individuals he arrested ended up committing suicide because his whole life changed. And as I've met with these guys and I've seen them, they're just little kids. You know, they're 25, 30, 40, 50 years old. And you know, my heart, you know, you want to demonize them, right? You want to go in and do a lot of other things that sit down and counsel them. But the reality is they're just little kids. and they've never had community. They never had, I don't think, much of a father. They never had anybody tell them, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. They never had a community to share the struggles, the addictions that they're going with, that go all different directions. But that demand, the law enforcement, we meet so many different law enforcement that are just desiring a card. They police have one place to put people. It's in jail. They're not set up for victims. Okay, and they'll tell us this. We need the community to provide for the victims. It's not our job, And so they come in not just when they arrest or have someone within their custody, but they come in contact with so many situations that they know something's going on, but they can't do anything. And for them to be able to say, hey, if you're in trouble, or if you do want help, contact these people. And we want to be able to be a size that we could do that significantly and provide for that. Jessica talked about the resource center, but also expanding our recovery beds and just seeing the need for that, because so many individuals, they get to a point, and yes, they've been in a safe house, they've been in treatment, and this is both men and women, but especially for women in trafficking, where the average age in our country is a young teen gets involved. Where do they go after treatment? Where? There's no place for them to go. And they literally end up in the same neighborhood, sometimes the same house that got them there in the first place, because that's the only place they got to go. And so to be able to see the women come through our recovery home, and we have a vision of seeing that. I've just talked to a pastor today that says, man, I came to a meeting that you guys had 2 years ago, and we want to do one of those houses with you guys. We want to see that happen and see that expand. And so, Source as an organization, we come from, if I'd share the budget back in 1995, is pretty scary numbers, as far as how low they were. But we've been an organization that, again, through the giving and through the incredible investment of partners, of individuals, of churches, we've been able to grow. But we're still a small organization, and we want to see some significant growth happen. With our purple light, I don't know if you can, boom, that's there. And I'm excited to say that we have received a donation of that biggest donation of $50,000. And we've received many more. But part of this is a goal specifically for our anti-trafficking. Okay, now we still have a need for a budget, and we're still looking at our year end, and want to raise over $100,000 for the general organization as well as our urban outreach. And that needs to continue as well. So let me end with this, and then Laura's going to come up and close us out and kind of give you the details of how to give. That's how this works, right? Everybody knows that, and you guys are able to come, and we're a small nonprofit, and you guys get to invest. But sincerely, this is worth your investment, and I have no problem saying that. When in the Bible, when John the Baptist was looking at death, and he sent out his disciples and said, go ask Jesus if he's really it, because we kind of assume he's like, man, I'm going through some hard times here, and I just need some assurance. And one of the things that Jesus says to his disciples, let John know, and there's several things, but let him know this: the gospel is being preached to the poor. The good news is coming to those that think they're not worth anything, that have no value. And this is worth your investment. And some of you have invested for years, and I thank you. A year from now, I might not be here. There might be an organization in Bahamas that lures us away, and we might, take up contracts with other places. But sincerely, we've gone through a bit of a journey, and, everybody in this room is going to die. We have a short time here. And so I want to encourage you to invest in the marginalized in your own city, in your own nation, and it's worth your investment. And so again, thank you so much for allowing us to do this. Some of you have been our first supporters 20 years ago. Thank you so much for allowing us and you being a part of Source. So, thank you.
If you would do me the favor as we wrap up our evening here of pulling out, someone on your table be responsible to pull out that manila envelope. And within that are envelopes with response cards that are double-sided. And we're going to start with the thank you for investing in hope and opportunity for our city is on the back side, where you're going to fill out all that important information for us. If you flip it over to the volunteer opportunities with Source Urban Outreach and Anti-Trafficking, we would love to invite you to come into partnership with us with your time and your talent and your energy. Particularly, we covet people of prayer to come and be part with us, to be partners with us. I know it went out, I think maybe, I will speak loudly. Oh, the lights. Okay. Oh, lights could come up. Yes, that would be great. We would love to invite you, especially who are people of prayer, to come alongside of us. It is foundational to all that we do, and we could not continue this work without partnership of prayer. If you have any interest, just tick the little box, the little lines next to community meals, which happen on Wednesday. We always love to have people join us and as guests and eat with our neighbors and be good neighbors, but you can also help to serve those meals. We have food shelf opportunities. We have anti-trafficking outreach, and those are outreach to women who are both being sold online, and we have new teams starting, reaching out to men who are posting online to purchase sex, because we believe that we also need to address the demand and not simply the victims of sex trafficking. We're always looking for office support, gardening, cleaning, golf. We have a golf tournament that has to find a new home. So if there's somebody with a country club connection in this room, our Hillcrest friends are not doing, they are closing down, so we can't be there anymore. We also have this fall banquet that happens if people would like to help with this event. And then monthly, we do newsletter stuffing parties. Glam Doll Donuts are in our neighborhood. And I'm a Starbucks fiend, so we provide you with good treats to come help. And then always prayer, which we also gather for the third Saturday of every month at 9 o'clock in our Fallout Center. Then if you flip to the other side, if you fill out your information there, we are looking for partners in a financial way, as Peter and Jessica both stated, whether that be a one-time gift, or if that is something, if you feel led to give on a monthly basis. Sometimes our most faithful givers are those who start with a small incremental amount every month, but over those many months and sometimes several years, that adds up for us. So we'd like you to prayerfully consider a gift. We have much work ahead of us, and so we'd encourage you to be generous in that. If you'd like to earmark your gift for either anti-trafficking specifically or our general fund, which covers our urban outreach, we would welcome those gifts. Fill out that information. And if you have a check, you can write it payable to Source Ministries and stick it in the envelope and tuck it right in that envelope. And she's going to play while you fill this out, and then I'll come and close this in prayer. Oh, texting. Yes, we have a slide up. If you would like to give via text, there is a number, I believe, on the screen. Yes, I can't see the screen from here. So you text to give. And that number is, you text donate 2017 to 41444 with any amount using a credit card. Thank you.
Hi. How about we all just take a deep breath in
and out. What a room. What a room. What a room full of stories and beauty and compassion. I'm Sally. I'm a resident volunteer. When I first met Peter just back in the summer, it turned out we had mutual friends in the UK. The world gets smaller every day. I sent out an email to some of the gang who are part of the team, and I just asked for some words that really inspired them when it came to working for Source. And I wrote a song, and it truly is just about the faithfulness of God and just about how thankful we are. So as you're sitting there and praying about how much you're going to give this evening, I'm going to sing this song. Walking beside, we lift up our hands and thank you, Father. Hope and a prayer, we turn and you're there, and thank you, Father. Found in your arms and all grace abounds, we thank you, Father. You have designed your wonder in time. We thank you, Father. You have been faithful. You showed the way. We have been humbled by the price that you paid. Here in this moment, the valley and high place. Oh, you have been faithful. Restoring these, we lift up our fears and thank you, Father. We heard your voice in freedom and choice, and thank you, Father. Serving in love on earth as above, we thank you, Father. Oh, glory now be with your eyes we see, and thank you, Father. You have been faithful and you showed the way. We have been humbled by the price that you paid. Here in this moment, the valley and high place. Oh, you have been faithful. Oh, you have been faithful. You are the source, the firm foundation. You are the source, the rock on which we stand. You are the source, oh God of healing. You are the source and our salvation. You have been faithful, you showed the way. We have been humbled by the price that you paid. Here in this moment, the valley and high place. Oh, you have been faithful. Oh, you have been faithful. And oh no, you never let go. Through the calm, through the storm. Oh no, you never let go. Every high, every low. Oh no, you never let go. Lord, you never let go of me. Breathe it in and breathe it out. Oh, and oh no, you never let go. Through the calm, through the storm. Oh every blow. Oh no, you never let go. Lord, you never let go of me. Just one last prayer. Here we go. You have been faithful. You showed the way. We have been humbled by the price that you paid. Here in this moment, the valley and high place, you have been faithful. Oh, you have been faithful.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much for sharing this evening with us. We are grateful for your partnership. We are grateful for your continued prayers for the Wooler family and for Source, and especially those that we serve who are marginalized, who often are estranged from family. And you get to be part of our spiritual family that provides a safe place to come home. We've been there for 30 years. We're not going anywhere. And we can invite people who've been gone and wandered far from God back home to his heart, where they know they'll receive love and acceptance, sometimes a kick in the pants, but always the sense that you can come and belong without coming to believe. And we hope that when you come and you're belonging with us, you're going to come to want to know why we believe what we believe. Let me pray us out this evening. And I don't want to pray for Source Ministries as much as I want to pray for you who are in this room. So please accept this blessing and pray with me. Lord God, we are so grateful for your children who are gathered here in this room tonight. We are grateful for the ministry through decades of the Heinrichs and the Woolers and all of the lives that have been impacted through Source over 30 years. God, we're stepping into new dreams and new adventures with you. And I pray that you would stir and equip each person in this room to step into that adventure with you, whether that's in prayer with us, in serving with us, in reaching out to those who are marginalized or have no voice, and those who financially support us to fulfill your dream. Equip us and send us to bring your love into a dark world. In Jesus' name. God's children agreed and said, Amen. Thank you so much for coming.